Gary Trent, he opts in, which honestly, it made sense. It was really hard for me to see Gary Trent walking away or getting some kind of a deal that a team was going to say, what, we're going to pay you $20 million a year over 3 to 4. It just, there didn't seem like there was anything out there. It's the first year of the salary cap, the new salary cap, which is pretty much a hard cap in the NBA. A little disappointing for people like me who hate salary caps and think that at least the NBA had a pretty damn good model of paying into luxury tax. Some teams in the NBA, though, were spending so much on the luxury tax, like the Golden State Warriors, that it almost forced the league's hand to go, okay, well, we've got to try and correct this to a certain degree, right? And you probably would have seen it in Phoenix, too.
Boston as well.
Yeah, Boston for sure, but Golden State and Phoenix, where you start to get into those repeater taxes, where you have multiple paid guys, it's what makes the Raptors, again, very interesting is they've been a team that has often not been an upper tier luxury tax team. They don't really like to do the tax. That's been pretty clear. Yeah. But they're heading into this offseason where a bunch of guys want a bunch of money, and you have to wonder how it's going to impact the Fred VanVleet signing. Gary Trent Jr. now is almost $19 million against the books. Jakob Poeltl wants $20+ million, and in a weird way, which is kind of stupid, them hoping to re-sign Jakob Poeltl more than Fred VanVleet. Like, if you're going to allocate that kind of money, I know they traded the first-round pick. It looks horrific if he walks away. But if you're going to tell me, hey, which of these two players would you rather have, Fred VanVleet or Jakob Poeltl, I would go, well, I would like Fred VanVleet.
Yeah.
He's the better of the two players. So what are we doing here? If you can only allocate to one of them, allocate to the better guy. Trade someone else. Find someone who can take Gary Trent Jr.'s money and worry about that later after you get the signings done. But I do think that it was a bit of a reminder that money around here is going to start to tighten up potentially, right? I've said it all along. The stupidest thing about that last year's deadline was that they knew they weren't going to be able to pay all of their guys. And that part of this was with the whole quote unquote run it back thing is that they were actually going to have to thin out their team. They're not going to be able to dump Otto Porter Jr. Grange made that very clear in his piece. Mm-hmm. I think that an executive saying he's a layup away from being out 4 to 6 weeks was a pretty good indication of the way Otto Porter Jr. is valued around the NBA. Mm-hmm. And I know the Raptors have no success when it comes to mid-level exception guys. And I know that, yeah, Otto Porter Jr. probably wasn't their big hopes and dreams, but it was hilarious to me last offseason that was the big move. And people went, he shoots threes and the Raptors need threes. And I was like, has no one paid attention to how many games this guy played a year for his entire career? He's a Band-Aid.
He was sick in Golden State.
A Band-Aid. He has walked around every stop getting hurt. And the Raptors rolled the dice on him, and he was supposed to fix some of their shooting woes. They were not a deep basketball team. They did not have chemistry. And now it really does look like they're going to run it back, but with one less guy. And that guy might be Fred VanVleet. So your position here is that you don't want to move anybody. You feel like you're somewhere near the Miami Heat, which is the other part of the report, which is, honestly, that's actually the scariest part of all of this, is that the Raptors would look at the Miami Heat and say, we're not that far off of who you are. And you go, okay, that's kind of true, right? Last year, there were moments during the season where you would have matched those two teams up and gone, hey, they're pretty close to one another. Mm-hmm. Do I think that the Raptors have a closer and someone who's proven and who's gone to 2 finals as the best player like Jimmy Butler, even if one's a bubble and one had good breaks? No. So I do think that's a bit delusional. But do I think that the Raptors could get solid performances out of players like Miami got from the Caleb Martins of the world?
Gabe Vincent's.
The Gabe Vincent's, exactly. Do I think that Siakam can play as well in a postseason as Bam Adebayo did? Yeah, I do. I don't think that they're that far removed from Miami from a talent standpoint. Mm-hmm. But Miami has done this. Jimmy Butler matters. He's being considered now as a top 10 guy in the NBA from the way that he played in the postseason, even though our boy Armin does like to point out that, yeah, the numbers in the first series were incredible. From that point forward, it was a pretty steep decline.
Yeah.
That they also did get an incredible amount of breaks, and that they're still Miami. They play in South Florida. They're the number 1 team being rumored to poach Damian Lillard. Yeah. You know why? Because it's Florida. Toronto's not in the rumors for Damian Lillard. They're in the rumors for the 3 pick.
Yeah.
Because Damian Lillard would not want to come here. So that's the part that actually worries me more than anything, is that the Raptors are deluding themselves into actually believing that they are some kind of a contender when they just went 500 each season before, and now it looks like they're going to be down a player. And how the hell do you get there if Fred VanVleet walks away? And Gary Trent Jr., I don't know how much he complicates this, because I would think that you could get off this money pretty easily since he's on a 1-year deal, and that the best thing moving forward for Gary Trent and for the Toronto Raptors was a scenario like this, because you go into the season, you hope he recoups some of his value. You hope that he plays really well for the Toronto Raptors, has a good shooting season, doesn't try to overextend himself at times offensively like he does, where he just becomes a complete black hole and does not pass, and he can just normalize himself to being a really good basketball player with some good pedigree. And then at the deadline, he's an automatic flip, right?
Yeah.
And you actually get an asset back for Gary Trent Jr. But it's just, there's no squinting for me that shows the Toronto Raptors as the Miami Heat of next year, where they make it to an NBA Finals. I'm sorry. I do not see a scenario where the Raptors go into this offseason and turn their team into, hey, don't worry, they're going to beat the Celtics, or they're going to beat the Bucks. A Bucks team which might have Giannis this time around fully healthy, not at whatever percentage
Giannis
he was.
with a back.
Giannis with a back. And is as good as a team that has actually made it to a conference finals and 2 NBA finals, and saying that they're really close to that, despite, sorry, what are your playoff successes over that same stretch?
Lost in the play-in game.
Uh-huh. You lost in a playing game. And
Lost in the first round.
yeah, and you lost, and a Boston Celtics defeat that was, pretty humbling, I would say, for everyone all around, even though it was a bubble. Whatever. Anyway, and then not making the
And then
playoffs.
missed the playoffs.
All right, if you say so.